wants 200, baby.
You ready to get back to the trading action?
You aim, you shoot, and make money. It's going to be a great day. You guys know where you're at.
Good morning, everyone. So it's going to be a little different today, but we absolutely wish Mitch the best, who's off with his family doing really fun stuff, I'm sure, Disneyland, all that kind of stuff. So it's going to be great to see, hopefully, a little, maybe we'll share some pictures of something that went, but it looks like a lot of fun. But we're going to be doing the same stuff. We're going to be trading. We're going to be talking about the markets. We're going to be going on everything that happens out there. And I am joined with my lovely co-host here, Steve. So we're going to get real nerdy. We've been told to talk about Fibonacci a little bit later in the show. So I knew Steve would love that. So we'll definitely go over that. But first, let's just do a little rundown of what we're seeing in the market, and then we'll pull Steve on here. We'll just pop over to this one. Perfect. Awesome. All right. So S&P 500 here. Gap. This is Friday's action. You can see pretty ugly. Got everyone scared. This candle right here is the first one that happened on Sunday night. And then we just started to bounce from there. So looking pretty strong overall when it comes to this bounce. So we got to see if this continues. I think this is kind of what everybody in the world, regardless of sector, regardless of what it is that you're looking at, is super concerned to see, hey, are we going to get this bounce? Are we going to get a move from here, or is this just kind of a little relief bounce and then we're going to roll over and move lower? So I think it's super interesting what's going to happen right off the gate to see whether that's going to hold. Because if we go into all the sectors, and we can actually do this by going into the heat map here and just taking a look. So this is the pre-market change on the Russell 3000, which is pretty much everything. It's like Russell 3000, like 98% of the tradable universe. And what we notice is that a lot of green in the names and the places that you would hope that there's a lot of green. And right, I'm talking Palantir, Google, MSTR, so we're seeing Nvidia up a little bit. Tesla is up a little bit. That's bouncing off the lows here. So we'll talk about that as well. A lot of interesting names going on, but just wanted to do a quick overview. We can go out here to the daily chart and just see that, yes, we are bouncing a little bit, but the question again is, are we going to get this bounce? I think it's going to be a good day to potentially talk about Fibonacci's and all of that fun stuff. But let's actually go here and let's add in my buddy Steve. Steve, how's it going?
Hey, how's it going, Michael? Good to see you.
So what do we think? Let's just do right off the bat. What do we think? Is this a little bit of a bounce and a fade, or is this going to be, are the Bears wrong again? Because so far the Bears have been just completely wrong.
It's tough to say. I gotta say, gun to my head here, first thing in the morning, I gotta go with dead cat bounce for now. I think that it's definitely on the table that we could power through and we could really start to make something happen for bulls this week. But I don't know where I'm at. Is Friday is not to be ignored. That is it was significant volume. It wasn't a beautiful weekly candle. We didn't engulf. We basically are back testing a failed breakout. Maybe we failed breakdown and run it right back up on Nvidia earnings. There's a lot of moving parts, I think, this week to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I saw the meme that was going around that basically everyone's talking about, like, here's what's important in the market this week, and they just put like the logo of Nvidia up. Yeah. Pretty much, we could talk about I don't know, there's probably some Fed guys yammering on about something. There's probably a lot of things out there that the news will talk about and try to cover, but I really think just being such a bellwether of the market, it's Nvidia or nothing, right? And Nvidia ends up, I don't even think they have to like blow anything out of the water. I think it's one of those that it's kind of like, it's like dealing with a bomb once a quarter. And
yeah, exactly.
You're like, just don't say anything to crash the market, please. And if they could just get by and they can say everything's pretty okay, then the market can go and do what it wants to do. But I do think that that's a pretty large level of fear in the overall market, because again, it's just a massive weighting. Not only that, it's just kind of a bellwether for the overall market and what people are thinking, what people are feeling there as well. So
yeah, I think it's particularly important this week just because one of the kind of scare factors on Friday was that Microsoft CapEx Honestly, I wasn't trading Friday, and I'm such a technical trader. I'm like, okay, so there was some catalyst on Friday. I guess it's either COVID or the Microsoft CapEx thing. So this puts half of it to bed, and I, I'm I think that there's always going to be another COVID scare. I'm not sure if the market cares if Nvidia is good this week. If Nvidia is bad this week, maybe it starts mattering more. But I don't know. I'm cautiously optimistic today, but I'm really watching the 605-ish area on SPY. I think it's like the 50% fib of the major move on Friday. It's like
in there.
the volume shelf. I can pull up my little chart.
Yeah, grab your charts too. We'll pop back and forth. So what you said, 605 on the SPY?
Yeah, right about there. Ballpark.
So in this, let's highlight this area right here, in this little area, and I'm kind of, and we are talking about fibs a little later, so this will make sense. But that makes a lot of sense to me. That's the halfway of the move. Not to spoil our fib talk too much, but that's the reason that I think a lot of these things work is that they're ballpark, 1/2, 1/4, 2/4. So it's one of those that if you were down $1,000, right? Say you bought yesterday and it closed on Friday and you're down $1,000 and the market bounces and you're only down a couple hundred or 500 now, maybe a little bit more interested and go, okay, let me take some off the table. I think really what we got to focus on is the low and the high of this candle. Anytime you get a massive candle like that, we can go back here as well, right? When we broke that low, that scared everybody in the pre-market, and then we came back and retook it. So we got to see if that's on a closing basis, what's going to happen there, whether we're going to retake it or not. So what were you looking at here for?
So these are a little bit messy. Forgive my scribblings here, and take it with a grain of salt. But just in general, what I'm seeing is, let me flip to a 4-hour. It's a little clearer. We can just look at this green ribbon here. And as you can see, like, what did we really do last week? We tried to close outside of a range break on Wednesday. We tried to get the little peekaboo action, and that got rejected pretty hard. So I look at last week as basically a look above and fail. So we tried to break out of this big consolidation, this big pennant. We came back down, but on the weekly, what I really want to focus on is that, let me zoom on in here. We are basically retesting trend. We're back testing here, this 21 EMA, weekly moving average. We could not lose the low of the previous week. That would have been pretty bearish if we closed below. Then I think the floodgates would be open. And just a big picture, what I am looking for if we do get the dead cat is I do expect, if we can't resolve this shape and kind of hold this volume shelf, this P-shaped volume profile that would generally be for bullish continuation, then I do think it's time to talk about, retesting, no shocker, the 50% of this range. So more fib talk. And then we have this big gap down here that I think we should all have on our radar. Doesn't mean it has to be filled anytime soon, but if we do lose this area here, I think this is a logical place to look for a swing trade, or at least, maybe take some tail risk hedges in case we do have a really, really ugly escalator down kind of day or two. But in general, I think we got to really watch early this week and kind of see what the market is doing in terms of tipping its hand, because there's a lot of landmines, I think.
I think, right, you hit the nail on the head, and I 100% agree with you there that what's important is between now and Wednesday, I would say, just that opening period of the overall market. Do we end up seeing if it's just like we've seen over the past year, where we're just going to buy the open this morning and just rip all day? Well, that's, more pain and fear on the bears, and eventually they're just going to kind of throw up their hands and give up. But if we end up seeing a lot more a sell-off and essentially a break of Friday's low, which I think you'll agree is probably the most important price in the market right now. If we see a break of that and a close below it, I think that's important to really, really talk about where, yes, I'm not saying, hey, if it breaks by a tick, all bets are off, new bear market. But if we see a significant close below it, well, right now there's probably a lot of stops placed, I would imagine, in that zone. That's why I'm kind of with you that I'd be shocked if they don't at least try to take us there. It just seems like, to take off the tinfoil hat, we gotta talk about all the time. The market doesn't care about your stop loss, right? It doesn't know where any of us, the market makers could not care about any of us less than, they're not sitting there saying, oh, look, Mike put out a stop loss, let me hunt that. But they look at places where a lot of people probably obviously put stop losses, and a place that everybody obviously put stop losses would have been below Friday's low, right? It's just such a clean candle, right? If
Especially
I'm
when you
buying
have
this,
that, I was just going to say the juicy round number too, right?
yeah, that 600 area, right? Probably
Mhm.
people say, oh, right, the market had a rough day on Friday, but we're gapping up a little bit. We get a little bit of reprieve this morning. So let me just put the stop at the low of the day and then just walk away. And if the market gets me, it comes get me. So again, I would be shocked if we don't at least try to go there, just because there's got to be so much liquidity down there for anyone that's looking to buy. But if we
Right.
don't get that and we just start ripping, then right, complete other 180 of my thinking, because we've seen, at least when we had these wicked bounces, they always preceded a gap down. So there's always a gap down and then the market ripped, and then a gap down, and then the market ripped, and gap down and the market ripped, right? Because they're trying to suck in shorts in order to fuel the move higher.
Mhm.
So Friday didn't feel like that, just because they were able to close it on the low. And Charles Dow taught us like 100 years ago that the close is the most important price of the market, and everything else is just kind of noise. So the fact they were able to close it down there, I don't know, that just feels like a little bit of a different game than we've been seeing so far this year.
I'm with you, and that's part of what's kind of informing my bias this week. I'm with you. I think we revisit the lows. I was saying, yeah, we're green in futures, and yeah, I kind of am expecting a green Monday, but I'm not convinced that it's going to stick. And like you said, one indicator that it would be sticking would be right out of the gate, the move very strong and feeling like kind of like a squeeze action. And again, you got to show me the money. You got to show me that close. And if it is a strong close, I think that we have the potential to kind of do that lockout move off of these what is it, the 200 moving average on the 4 hour. There, it feels like a pretty big brick wall. That being said, what I think is a more likely and more playable setup for long this week is if we do get that the fake breakdown and then a reclaim of that 600, that low of the week, that what is it? Is it the low of the month? Oh no, that's down a little lower. Never mind. But yeah, if we could sweep the liquidity that you mentioned right under that 600 handle, under the low of the week, under the 400 moving average, I think that there's a lot of potential for that fake breakdown look, and then you can get a nice $5 on SPY for a day trade or something. I think there's a lot of potential there. I'm just hesitant about buying it out of the open. I don't know if it's that kind of week for me.
Well, and that I think leads to some of the ideas that I've had here, some of the things that I was able to scan for this morning, and a lot of them, again, the setup that I'm playing with is fading gap ups, right? So this might be the perfect environment for just that. So
Yeah.
Some things that are gapping up just based off some news. We have Nike gapping up a little bit with it's just a buy rating on the stock. This thing has been a bit of a dog overall. So gapping up into a prior resistance zone after being so kind of hated for so long, I think that might be an interesting one to look to fade. So again, the way I'm looking to fade these is to take them back through. Let's turn off days here. There we go. Take them back through the VWAP from the open. If we can spend some time above that, Google. So that's gapping up here as well with a lot of the market. I think this was one. Yeah, they said they're going to boost AI spending as opposed to what you said, Microsoft, right?
Yeah.
That said that they're going to start cutting it, which doesn't seem too crazy to me, because it's like, okay, you're cutting it from what, a gazillion dollars to like half a gazillion dollars. Like,
Right. Yeah.
It's not like they're saying, oh no, we got scammed with AI, we're going to move on with our life. It's just, we're gonna take a little bit of a time here and take a little bit of a chill.
Yeah, I would say kind of how much is price to perfection probably isn't the correct term here, but how much there's no amount of AI capex, which is really bearish for Nvidia. I don't think it's just about this cycle, like how much how close are their models? How much do we kind of need to adjust the napkin math here, so to speak, when you have DeepSeek training on so much cheaper, one thing that I was pulling up the charts you were mentioning in Google. I do think that there's a pretty compelling case that a bottom is pretty close for Google, just in terms of this weekly channel that we are trading in. It seems like it's responding pretty well off that close to the low of. So I am keeping an eye on this. It's just a very well well documented channel, these multiple touches on the top, multiple touches on the bottom. So, it's just a general area where I'm personally a big Google bull. I think me and the rest of the world was pretty shocked when we didn't get that breakout on earnings, but I think that we're pretty close to being ready again personally. So this is actually a name on my focus list for the long for this week, but
Sweet. And this
yeah.
is, a good time to talk about multiple time frames, right? Because
Mhm.
mostly what I do is kind of what you're talking about there with swing trading. These I'm specifically just mentioning for, right, get
Mhm.
in, get a couple bucks, get out.
Sure.
Are
Absolutely.
because if the market's going to fade and then retest that lows, Google's going to join it, right? It's just
Yeah.
one of those that, right, it's just a large market component, so it's going to hang out with it there as well. So just a couple of the others, some of these I don't even know what they do. ZETA, Zeta Holdings. Again, I'm looking for things that are generally weak overall, and
Yeah.
then just trying to fade a little bit of a gap up here. Uh, Oracle, another one, right? Big down day on Friday, just looking. But again, a lot of these will be moving with the overall market. One thing that kind of came to my radar this morning was Tesla. Now, this is going to be weird, and this is, I think, one of the benefits of trying to do what I'm doing here with Trade the Pool is I am long Tesla from in my normal big boy account, and have been for a while, like since the election, essentially. And it becomes interesting because now I have a completely separate account that I can day trade with, and I can look to fade sometimes. So in a perfect world for me, we have a down day in Tesla and I get a short there, and then we rip back up into the highs and everything's fine. That's
Yeah.
that's the hope when it comes to this. But yeah, I worked a little bit with these, um, trying to get these alerts so they'll alert me when the thing occurs, so I can spend most of my time doing analysis and important things, and then just get alerted when the time comes. The only other one that was interesting is Carnival Cruise Line, a little bit of a gap up today that could be faded. These are interesting to me on the daily chart. So again, this is one of those things that I'm interested in buying some of these cruise lines. Just looking at the daily support, they're fading into a gap. There's some decent look there. Need some
Yeah.
recovery to happen, but it's a nice look. But again,
Um,
yeah,
no,
it's
totally.
just, you got the
Sorry to
chart up there.
interrupt you there.
Yeah, and anytime you want to grab a chart, right? If you just hover over your chart and you just click add to stage, just pop it up. Let's just start sharing them back forth. I put yours up there now.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to, I was pulling up this chart. I'm not actually familiar with this ticker. I usually trade the CCL one. I'm not sure how the liquidity differs on this.
Yeah,
Um,
probably pretty correlated, I'd say.
oh, well, yeah, definitely for sure. I don't know which one's better to actually like scalp, but it is interesting kind of watching it kind of back test this cup look, so to speak, right? So it overshot, it swept all these stops. It did seem like it wanted to break higher. So now we do have a really interesting look. So I'm going to be watching these names too. Another one, what is it? RCL, I believe, is the leader in the space. Yeah,
That's
this one's
Royal.
an insane move. You can see my
Yeah.
scribbles down here. Wish I stuck with it.
Mhm.
But yeah, this is another one I'll be watching to kind of inform bias on the sector, I guess you could say. So these 21 weekly moving averages are pretty reliable for trend, in my opinion.
Yeah, they
Um,
have been they've been quiet runners. Like I haven't heard anyone talk about them. It's the same that happened with the airlines for
yeah.
some time. That Jets ETF just went nuts, but no one was really chatting about it too much. It was just they had these wicked trends, and those are often, I've found, those are the best trends if you can get a hold of, because then everyone
Mhm.
starts talking about, right, they wake up one day and they go, holy smokes, RCL is doing great, and that's probably the time to take your money and move on to something else, right?
Right.
When everyone starts talking, but yeah, just these quiet, like, up. It's very hard to find those trends, but when you do, you just have to have a plan to hold on as long as you can, because they're very rare to something like that, just printing money kind of day after day.
Right. And it really shows that the market got caught flat-footed on something quite systemic. For
Hmm.
these airlines, I mean, COVID, it was pretty egregious, these sell-offs. I won't pretend like I understand all the macro moving parts, but oh shoot, there was another sector that was just coming to my head as a great example, but now I'm blanking. It'll come right back. But
Hmm.
yeah, these crazy moves, they're like you said, they're the ones you want to be a part of. only I could remember. Oh yeah, financials. So this is one that I wanted to keep an eye on the monthly chart, especially. Like, this is one of my favorite monthly patterns ever. I call it the bullish hot dog. And when you get the green bun, and then you got that, this should be a red candle if I didn't have the special colors on. But this is like 3 months of just coiling, basically. I think it's ready for another leg. And one name in particular that I really want to keep on my radar here is Citibank. C. I think that it's one that hasn't really made up the major leg from the financial crisis. You know, it still has some crazy legs here. If it can break this 1, 2, 3, 4 times attempting to break this zone. So this is on my long-term holds. I think this is going to double in the next couple of years, just because if they were going to go bankrupt, I think they would have. And look at this chart. Like,
they were on the absolute cusp. There was a while, I think the government stepped in to bail them out once or twice, because they were right there. They were just right on the nose of going bankrupt, and the government came and said, okay, we need to keep, because this was right after Lehman, and then there was Merrill. There was a lot of these names that went, and they just said, okay, well, we got to save, because again, I'm not American, but the way I read it was that basically Citigroup is kind of the everyman's bank. Like, it's not like a Merrill Lynch where, yes, they have branches and stuff like that, but Citigroup's just more kind of on the ground. And that they were calculating the amount of people that would get hurt in a Citigroup bankrupt, and they go, oh, we can't let this happen. So I think they just backstopped them for a while. But yeah, that was an interesting tale with those guys.
No doubt.
Quickly, economics, right? So there's nothing really. Right? Dallas Fed Manufacturing Index, which is like a 2-star thing, that's 1130. So other than that, there's really nothing. Nothing really too much, even for the week. We've got on Thursday a little bit, and then we've got some PCE and things like that on Friday. So Thursday and Friday we have reports, but nothing throughout the week now. So that probably means usually when you see that, you have a pretty active, and I think we're going to get a very active Monday, and then Tuesday, and then maybe Wednesday they start to kind of calm down and wait for numbers. But they at least have a couple days before something happens. I see there are some Fed Logan speech. I just really wish these guys would just stop. Consumer confidence tomorrow is a little bit market moving. And then again, more Fed speaks. It's like just like on Sunday night, all the Feds get together and just do whatever yapping they want to do, get it completely out of their, on the weekend. All right, now during the week, just shut up, guys. Let the markets do what it's going to do.
Right. I'm with you. I know there's a few important options too. I am not sure their exact hierarchy there, but there are. I'm going to be yelling at my bond guy and telling him to keep me posted on the relative strength of those.
So yeah, I see 3-year, 6 month, and 2 years. But yeah, I'm not. Bond trading and bond analysis is just a whole other world that I just haven't even bothered to step foot in.
Yeah. My eyes glaze over. Just let me know when TLT hits my long trigger,
Yeah. It's, there's a lot of argument to say that the bond guys are smarter than the stock guys. They're generally moving way more money. The amount of money going in the bond market is way different than the overall stock market. But yeah, SPY, we're selling. We've got about 5 minutes to the open. We're selling a little bit here, but just like we're going to do every time, go to the SPY, turn on the pre-market data. I'm going to mark, instead of marking the pre-market low or the post-market low like I normally do, I think it's just probably better just to mark this low right here.
Yeah. And
then we can mark that pre-market high. And then as long as we are inside that zone, then I think everything is going to be good. If we end up breaking that one way or another, then we've got to worry a little bit, I think. But right now we're just kind of hanging out. And I think it's going to be one of those, how like a fight starts and sometimes they just like dance around each other and kind of size each other up. That's what I think is like the first 10, 15 minutes here of this market, where people are like, okay, if you're a bear, you have gotten slapped a whole lot, right? If you go back just to the daily chart of the SPY, every gap down has just, every time we have a sell off, you've just been beaten. And then with bulls, when we get to the top of the range, every time they've gotten up there, they've been beaten. So I think both sides have been kind of slapped around enough that they're just going to say, okay, let's take a second. Let's figure out which of us, do kind of a nice handshake and see which of us will end up out on top here. Because yeah, both sides have to be a little bit worried about stepping out too quickly.
Absolutely. No, and it really is a fight. We all have a plan until we get punched in the mouth. So let's see which of these kind of trajectories, which of these paths gets more traction here. And if we see, I mean, I personally, I love when we get the bulls on the or bears on the ropes, to keep on the fighting analogy. So I'd like to see some squeeze action happen, but I think you're right. We got to really just let the market size each other out, and we just got to catch the wave, right? We don't gotta be first. We don't gotta catch the first 20% of a move.
Right. Some questions here, some stocks to look at. So someone was asking about Tesla. So this had some sort of, I was actually just on Trader TV before I popped in here, and I was in the green room, and so at least I heard the news on this one, and they were saying it had to do with the fact that they're doing something in China. So they're going to allow more self-driving stuff in some places in China. So that's just, I guess, good for them. But this daily chart, right? I think this is all that matters. This is, I guess, an alert I have for down here. But we have these prior highs right here at kind of 350. So that's the zone that I think that's important. It wouldn't surprise me if we just kind of chop around the zone for a little bit before resolving one way. I got to bet higher just because that's the overall trend.
Yeah.
But a nice little bounce up there into yesterday's range and into yesterday's high. These are the perfect times to look at like multi-day VWAPs. See, okay, if we can get and hold above there, maybe. If not, maybe not. A couple of
Tesla's so tricky, isn't it? I mean, it's like I think our read's right. I think it's going a lot higher, but man, is it not a linear, it's not a, hey, Elon's in the White House, let's party. They're really shaking the tree. And I think what we're probably going to end up seeing is a bearish pattern get rejected. And then we're going to power out of that because it looks like it's just dangling that head and shoulders for the whole market, for all the Elon haters. But
well, it's funny. That's one of the reasons that I like it, right? Again, I'm in a different country, so I don't care about your guys' politics one way or the other. But the more something gets hated, the more I'm like, okay, this is now. It's kind of like the talk on Intel. I never got interested in Intel, and I never got involved in Intel because it was never hated. It was always one of those. This is a darling. This will come back at some point. So no one's ever saying, "Oh, Intel sucks. It's going to zero" or whatever, and they never hated it. But China with FXI, everyone hated China. It's like, this is an uninvestable garbage, whatever. And I'm like, okay, so let me find an area that technically would make it strong, and I'm going to get involved here.
Totally.
Same with Tesla. Tesla's been kind of the most hated stock for a very long time. Many times throughout its career, its life, it's been one of the most hated stock, and it's ripped, I think, because of it, not necessarily for any other reason, just because it continues to perform, and it's one of those in spite of, as opposed to because of.
Exactly. How it was explained to me is that if Tesla was going to move off of fundamentals, it would be moving off of fundamentals. It is moving off of speculation and bear tears, So we got to respect moves like that, because when you're a hedge fund manager, you need some moonshots, right? And if the moonshot is Cathie Wood, RK, Tesla, you allocate 0.5% of your port or 5% of your port or whatever, and you don't look at it when it oscillates 10%. You buy more if it drops 20%. You don't freak out, Nobody's selling Tesla because it's too risky, at least in the context of a large report, in my opinion.
Yeah, you're sizing these things accordingly.
Yeah.
So we have just opened here. I'm sending out some orders on kind of the automated stuff that I'm trying to do here. And then we'll all right, there we go. And then we'll just kind of keep that going, keep that in mind. All right. So let's take a look at the SPY. let's see. So we sold off into the open, and that's kind of interesting, right? When you get that initial sell off, and that sell off happens into the actual opening print. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to move lower. It just means that was the sentiment to the last people who were dumping in before the institutions and the big guys were able to get involved there. So again, so I'm watching this, the pre-market low, kind of important, but for me, it's this low right here is everything. And then I just want to watch some VWAPs, right? So if we go into the SPY here, we have both the 1 and the 2 day VWAP, which the 1 day VWAP is the blue line. The 2 day VWAP is the yellow line. They're kind of right in the same kind of 602 area. So this just shows the average price of people yesterday and today, where that's sitting, and then the average price of where people are today are right around that 602, 603 area. So we need to see what happens if we're going to bounce there. I, for one, am not super excited to take any trades right off the jump. I want to give everyone a little bit of time here, 15, 20 minutes to have things resolve, and then I'll look to see. You may see, things pop up here. I just want to make sure I have this alert going. But yeah, so I do. I'm working on messaging and all of this for this stuff now. But yeah, the idea is we're looking for cross below. There we go. There we go. Let's make sure that works.
We are getting some nice volume here. This is what I look for an up day. I gotta say, we gapped up pre-market. We came back down. We held 50% fib again, this little range, and now we are showing more volume on the way up than down. So I'd be looking for an engulfing here. Maybe it hangs out up by VWAP for a little bit, but this is kind of textbook up day for me at least. We gap up, we come back, we test the mid. So far, it looks like we have an incentive to hold this VWAP, but obviously, candle closes are what matters, right? So we're going to keep an eye on that. One thing that I did want to note, just in terms of our swing traders, since we maybe don't have something actionable right yet to take as a day trade, I just want to put this on people's radars. DIDIY. It is a Chinese stock. It is Chinese robo, like ride sharing, I believe. And boy, howdy, if this isn't a pretty base, I don't know what is. It is real close to doing the thing. I think this ascending triangle base looks very stable to me. The weekly is just getting bought up every time it's at even a tiny bit of a discount, and I think that it's running out of sellers here. So when it does break out of this $5 range, I think we can expand up to 7 pretty fast. And the longer term look is this has some work to do up to $10. I think it's an easy double in a couple of years. So just put it on people's radars if they're looking for other ways to play that China theme that isn't Baba up, an insane amount on the week, year, month, everything. You can tell I'm a little sad I missed it.
I am still holding Baba for now. Hopefully it doesn't fall apart. The only caveat that I'll give to that is it's a Chinese stock, and it's a Chinese stock on the pink sheets. So the OTC markets. So I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I just think it's one of those that you have to go, okay, let me make sure that I am, I'm trading accordingly, right? That I'm sizing myself that if this thing gaps up or down 5 or 10%, then it's fully expected that we're going to have a move like that, right?
Totally, Michael, you're the angel on my shoulder. These are the things that people need to hear. It's not all upside. Absolutely, there's a reason why it dropped.
Well, it's one of those. It's a sizing thing, right? I think you can trade anything. It just comes down to sizing, whether or not it's going to be something that you're gonna get involved in heavily or not. It's entirely up to you. You just got to understand that it's gonna gap. If you're right, it's gonna gap for you. If you're wrong, it's gonna gap against you. But there will be a substantial gap in this play. So you won't be able to manage risk when it occurs. So you have to manage risk when it comes to position sizing.
Right. One of my favorite commodity traders I've learned a lot from. He is Captain Insano. Some of the stuff he invests in, these speculative, small cap gold miners and stuff. But he knows the deal. He says volatility is a gift, and if volatility isn't a gift, then I'm sized wrong. If I'm not like, yes, this play I like is 20% cheaper, then I'm probably over leveraged in that.
Yeah.
So we did get the rejection of VWAP. That's why we don't trade the first candle there.
Yeah, I was going to show that wild candle right off the open, and then on the Qs here, just complete rejection. Now we're under pre-market lows. SP 500, same thing. We got into pre-market range, rejected from it, and again we got to watch. We got to watch these lows down here. If we end up getting there, that's going to be interesting to me. A lot of these things that I was looking for to break down under VWAP just already happened.
Yeah.
Google is the only thing that I have on watch for a potential move lower. You can actually see the alert came through right there. So I just don't know if this is if I want to do anything this early, right? I don't think that that's something that I'm super interested in. So I'm going to continue to watch, especially the 2-day VWAP on Google is really, really close. So I don't think there's enough of a potential profit there when it comes to a move like that.
One name that looks like I'm very bearish on this name overall. It looks like it's breaking down this morning is RH, Restoration Hardware. This one looks stinky to me. It is breaking out of this long-term. It's a long-term bear flag, and I think it is getting confirmation here today. So I'll be keeping an eye on that one.
Yeah, so I'm just watching the SPY here. If this thing continues to, well, this is the daily chart that we talked about. A gap and sell would be exactly, if I was bearish, that's what I'd want to see today. I wouldn't want to see it gap down. I wouldn't want to see it to just gap, not gap at all and just sell. I'd want to see a gap up, and I'd want to see that gap up fade, because we talk about it all the time. Stocks can do whatever they want in the pre-market, especially if they're low volume stocks. And if you've been trading for some time, especially if you have kind of a low volume name and it looks so amazing in the pre-market, you're like, oh, what's going on? My stock is gapped up like 100% in the pre-market, and then it's like one tick, and that's just the way it happens, right? So what we want to see is we want to see the open. We want to see the open because that's where the big guys get involved, right? This is where the institutions, they don't play so much in the pre-market, maybe a little bit with futures, but definitely not with stocks. There's just not that juice. There's not that liquidity for them. So if it gaps up, that's kind of retail and the little guys getting excited that it's gapping up. And then if it slams down off the open, then that's the big boys, right? That's the big boys saying, okay, I'm gonna sell this one off the open. So again, watching some of these names that are starting to come through here. Again, Google down a bit, so that's the 2-day VWAP. So that was a miss, but that would have been the trade. This ZETA, not really even sure what these guys do, so I definitely won't take them, but might not be much of anything. The only thing that I'm really watching here, and this is the one that I'll probably take a shot on, would be Nike, just because it's gapped up above it. There was some news there, and again, we would just be looking to short if we end up closing below the VWAP here on a 2-minute chart. Then the stock goes to the high of the day, and then you just kind of move on with your life. So it's, again, I'm trying, full disclosure to everyone, I popped a couple accounts. I've been full disclosure about that since I got here. I've been trying to come up with these plans and to build these plans. So as I'm talking to you guys about like waiting and being patient, all that, I'm doing it to myself as well. So I'm still on that journey where I'm looking to pull in that $100 a day and then just walk away, training myself that day trading is not like swing trading. Swing trading, you're going for it. We talked about, some of these trends that happened in jets. Like I was in some of these names, not for this whole move, but maybe I think right around here. And right, I'm trying to convince myself every day to stay in, where with day trading, I got to convince myself every day to get out. So it ends up being a kind of a conflict of sorts. So nothing there for Nike, nothing really happening so far as of yet. So we'll just kind of keep an eye on what's happening. Let's pop into the tree map and see if you can see anything here that helps. So Palantir down 5% on the day.
Oh man, that news is sticking. How about that? I think that is an important bellwether for the market as well, because I don't think that was a new headline that Trump was cutting defense spending. I think that was the market looking for a catalyst to take some profit on that.
The only news I see, right, Palantir falls for the 4th day in a row. So yeah, if you go to this daily chart, right, gap down and into the gap and into this zone, that's a bit problematic. So man, that gap is, the low of that gap is 85. that would be pretty substantial if we end up getting that. So that's an interesting bellwether. What else can we glean from here? So Nvidia up, right? Tesla is now flat even after that Chinese news. That's interesting that we've gotten. Oh, it's pre-market change. Maybe I'm doing this wrong. Let's go performance today. No, yeah, Tesla's up 1%, but that's not nearly as substantial as before. UNH down again. So the reason that UNH is so important is a lot of people don't know this. This is the largest Dow component, and it's because the Dow is a price weighted index. So the more expensive the stock, not necessarily the bigger the stock, the more expensive the stock, the larger effect it has. And it's
So silly.
It's silly, but you go out and you look at, let's look at the SPY, right? And then let's add in the Dow, and it just shows you that, anyone who gets mad about, Tesla or all these names are such a large component of the market, it doesn't really matter, right?
Yeah.
In the end of the day, if we line them up to when they both started, it's pretty much the exact same chart, right? Up a bit, down a bit, up a bit, obviously lagging recently because there's not a lot of tech in the Dow. But yeah, just to show you that, hey, it doesn't really matter how you weight these things, as long as you're just holding a basket of stocks and you have some idea on how to rotate them, you'll probably end up doing okay. So yeah, UNH continues down. Let's bring up the SPY here, see what's happening in the overall market. Kind of lagging up here. Let's try this chart. There we go.
Tempest has some juice. That's nice to see. So it does look like they're trying to cycle some of those ARK names. It doesn't look like they're all dead. That is something I kind of, it's my Square despair index. Whenever Square beats earnings and dies 20%, I'm like, what's going on with these stocks? I love them, but I can't invest in them, So still groundhogs, still hiding for another 3 months, I guess.
This bounce so far in the market looks pretty anemic.
Yeah.
It doesn't look very good to me at all. This isn't a bounce that I'd be interested in buying here anyway. And just looking 2-minute chart, these topping tails just keeps getting slapped over and over again. So looks like we may break down to new lows here. So we got to keep an eye there. I never end up doing anything with Nike. It just never closed below. So it went the other way. And again, nothing else. That Google would have been the perfect kind of take your money and get out. Now it's bouncing a little bit here. So that's kind of the only discretionary setup I got. Tesla is kind of interesting here too. Hit the 2-day VWAP almost to the tick, and now it looks like it's fading a little bit.
Seeing a little relative strength there, which I would hope, considering it got beat back to a potential double bottom. But yeah, there's nothing that's really screaming at me, playing me right now, Gotta say. I'm expecting SPY fills the gap, and that's kind of the next little node of interest that I'm watching. What do we do once we kind of mitigate that tape gap there? We kind of iron out that bubble, so to speak. Are there buyers there? I don't know. Sure doesn't look like it yet, but maybe that's where they're waiting. Let me pull up Bookmap too, and I'll see if I can draw anything from that.
Tesla's struggling pretty hard there.
Digesting that 50 fib there, looks like. Looking to me like it wants to retest lower too, yeah.
And then I'm just going to keep checking on Tesla. So let's take a look here. Someone says we hear your filled orders, Steve. So if you're sharing computer sound, then
shoot.
But
interesting. I don't think that's me.
Oh.
Maybe
Maybe not.
Sure hope I don't have any orders going. Jeez. That's a little alarming.
Maybe you want to take a second and check.
I'm going to double check. Thank you for whoever.
Just to make sure. So some other names that people were looking at. PEPG. This is Steph. Steph plays these crazy guys. I really wish I had the discipline and everything to participate, but a lot of these are very low floaters that are just they're going buck wild. STEC, is that Stantec? Yeah, Stantec's not a crazy low floater. Stantec Holdings. Did that do a reverse split or something? What's going on there? Whoo.
What in the world?
Is that one of these? This might be a. So that Stantec was STN. So this is Stantec versus. Oh, this is just a different beast. I was thinking of this guy, and the only reason I got upset, I got worried, is because my buddy works there, and he's always talking about how great his stock's doing. And I look at it, and it's tanked, and it just scared me a little bit. So I wonder if that's just a different. It's probably just a different company entirely. It's probably not even close to the same beast.
That's a heck of a daily chart, though. I gotta say, on STC, that's modern art right there. That's
yeah. So this is one that if I noticed, I probably would have looked to take a short on, but it's probably just going through gaps. So all of this nonsense is always, when you see that, that's always a SPAC, right? You just know that's just a SPAC going on there. And then a move down, like all SPACs, then it looks like a couple news trying to fix it, but not working out so well. I did end up taking, I just got triggered there, so I'll share with you guys in Google. The reason for is it came kind of back up to the 2-day or the 1-day VWAP, and then this low, and then looking to take a short just to see if it can maybe come down. And I'm just playing this as a way to kind of play against the Qs and the SPY, just because we were looking at that bounce and we were saying that's not a really good bounce. So just trying to do a little momentum scalp here on Google. If we kind of break through these lows of the day and flush a bit, that will probably be my target to get out and hopefully hit that daily target, which I'm trying very hard to stick to, and then to walk away. It's insane how hard that actually is to do nothing. It's wild how that works. Overall SPY, not really doing too much here. You know, we had that initial flush off the open. Now we just need to see what's next, right? It's just one of those, the whole market is kind of waited with bated breath. You could, however you want to rationalize this, a lot of people will look at this so different. You put 10 technicians in a room. Some will look at that and say, yeah, that closed the gap. And some of them will look at it and say, no, it doesn't close the gap until it hits the closing print. Some will say, no, it hasn't closed the gap until it hit the low. For me, I just look at it and I say, that's probably close enough.
We love arguing about what constitutes a real gap fill. No true gap, no true Scotsman type thing. So what I think is most important is, like you said, there has been some tape healing. Maybe it's not every single tape, but in general, we're coming back. We're fixing up the poor structure. And on Bookmap, I am seeing some supportive flow. If you'd like, I can. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
So what we're seeing here is, I'll just kind of walk you guys through the tape here. We have this heavy liquidity up top here. We have a second layer here. Price comes down. They add a little back. It tries to coax it up. We're still holding VWAP. They kind of take this off as we lose the VWAP. And what do we see here? We're going to start to see them adding more below in these kind of tranches here. And especially right here, you can see this kind of pop yellow right as we lose the VWAP. So they're pulling price down. What do we see up here? This red, it's a spoof. They put the order on the books. Price rushes to the order. They take it right off, and then they sell it back to the pits of hell. They're laddering it down. But now we're reaching this kind of big node here. So this is where it starts to get interesting. We do have this kind of resting liquidity that is kind of absorbing. That's why we're seeing this chopping here. We are, basically we had red tape. Now we have mixed tape. So what I would like to see is this continue. I'd like to see them kind of adding and coaxing it up. What we're seeing there, that's them pushing it down still. So what it looks like is they're going to sweep the 630 big level. And when I see this being added to down here, I got to say this is shaping up for a more bearish kind of look. If you look on this side here, this is the wider look, right? This is showing a bigger range of price, and we're just seeing this lighting up. It's kind of lit up here, kind of lit up here, kind of lit up down at 5,975. So for me personally,
as you're talking, we're breaking that 600 level. So yeah, it does look like it turned out. This is very interesting. And I looked at Bookmap before, and I was very, very interested by it. I couldn't figure out a way to systematize it. And that's just how my brain, everything has to be a system. But if you're someone who's big into tape reading, I highly recommend checking them out, because it's visual tape reading. So what Steve's showing you is these dark areas. There are areas in which there's resting order, there's liquidity in that zone. It's trying to quantify that liquidity side of things. And if you're someone who's very interested, again, the whole tape reading kind of thing, I think this is amazing, because it shows you kind of like a tape chart, for lack of a better term.
It seems like a lot to process. It's like a Doppler radar threw up on your screen, but it's like
Hmm.
it actually is pretty intuitive once you kind of get a feel for it. So I mean, for me, it's I always think of the market as kind of like a living, breathing, like expanding and contracting entity. And this for me, it just really does. It clicks with my brain. I think that yeah, it's a very it's a very visual. If you're a visual learner, you probably have a
Yeah.
lot of success with this. Like I'm watching the liquidity build up at 6025 as they're kind of beating on the door of this one. So for me,
Hmm.
they're prepping for a flush here, and I'm getting some kind of alert. Something broke a level. XBI is getting beat on. Okay.
Oh, that's maybe that's what Nomad was hearing there, because I heard that as well. So just the alerts on
Gotcha. Let
on
me see if I can silence that for you guys.
trading.
Sorry
No,
about
no,
that.
I don't. I think it's fine. It off the open, there's a lot of alerts, and then it usually kind of calms down. But yeah,
Yeah.
as we're seeing that, right, we're seeing this kind of bleed through in the overall market as it just continues. So, couple attempts at a bounce, but those are pretty weak looking attempts so far. So,
Yeah.
again, we have to see what happens if and when we get to that low. If that low ends up being defended, then it could be a rip. But it's one of those, like we talked about earlier. There's another little push down. I would be very shocked if they don't try to break this big candles low, just because
Yeah.
you got the 50-day moving average there. You've got, I think 50 EMA is what I have, and you got so much liquidity below. You'd imagine they're going to try to flush it, and then they're going to try to say, okay, now that we're trying to flush it, now what can we get from that liquidity, and then we see what happens, right?
Yeah, I would expect the flush very shortly here, just based on this book map. They're really laddering it down to the 620, and I think
Mhm.
that what is I mean, basically, it's going to confirm what you're saying to a T, one way or the other. Either we're going to see that flush out, and then we're going to see the book map pile in the other direction, or we're just going to see it plunge down, and then they'll start kind of closing the door above us, so to speak, and then pushing it down. So right now, nothing nothing too good for bulls. They got some work to do.
Yeah, there's been no serious bounce attempt at all so far today. So no reason to be interested. And it's one of those now that I've been watching this Nike for a potential breakdown, but it's at some point I got to look at it and say, you want to talk about relative strength,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
They're not selling this in any way, shape, or form, even when the whole market is now selling. Now we're under the selling's kind of accelerating here. We're getting to these new lows. I have taken profits on Google, so I am now shutting it down. This is exactly what I wanted from Google. It's just a little bit of a flush in the lows there. That is
nice.
the $100 target today. This is the time in which I wish there was a button to just like click the button and Michael will not be able to take another trade today.
Yeah, yeah.
So what happens is,
That's
like, later in the day, I look at something, I'm like, oh, that looks kind of interesting. Maybe I'll take a little bit of a shot there, and then
get back a third of it.
yeah, I give
You're like
back a
me.
third, and then I get mad, and then I give
Yeah,
back a little more, and then by the end of the day, it's something that, right? We're a half hour into the day. I made $100 on a 20K account, right? If it's a 200K account, that'd be $1,000. Well, what else do I want, right? It's like one of those, you got to remind yourself, stop being so greedy.
yeah.
It's day
Do
trading,
the
right?
do the calculations. How much are you making per hour? Right. That's a pretty good hourly wage right there.
Yeah, where it's so and it's just get through a couple of these evals, start to build up. If the strategy works, I'm going to try to just automate it more and more, just add it to my repertoire of everything else I do. So we're just dancing. We're dancing here with the lows. Um, so again, just to talk about the idea behind Google was the alert came through right here. The idea was shorting from VWAP to VWAP. I missed that initial short. I was just kind of waiting that first little bit. So when we bounced back, we got to that price. I just punched in there. And the idea was if we got anywhere near the highs, it's time to go. So any significant strong close above the VWAP, it's time to go. And then I just had a target to basically say if we flush down this 2-day VWAP, it's probably time to take off. So now if it was one of those things where I was still trading, actually what I'd be watching on this one is if the market digs in and Google digs in, then a break to the other side, right? So that's
Yeah,
if we hold this, because so again, the reason the 2-day VWAP is so interesting is because it's the average price of today and yesterday. So it's basically saying what's the average price of everyone who was trading during this nonsense right here. So if we dig in and hold on to that, and then we make our way up to 2-day VWAP or the 1-day VWAP and break through, it's just saying, okay, now we've kind of trapped in some shorts and we're looking to get involved. So this is the idea behind the trading strategy before I add, because that's going to be the next thing. If this first idea ends up panning out and I can pass an eval account with it, the addition, because I'm always going to look to add trades, is just that later in the day on anything that's kind of moved down, I'm just going to set alerts if it gets back through VWAP, right? And the beauty is you can do that very easily on TradingView. You just right click and say, hey, tell me if Google does a 2-minute close back above VWAP, and then have your app on your phone and continue to live your life. And when it pops up, you say, okay, let me take a shot. And it would be take a shot there, stop at the low of the day, and then probably close it at the close of the day. So again, this is just how some people come in every day, and they're very much reading the news and doing the technical analysis and trying to figure out the trade or two to take. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. For me, I trade in systems. So I'm thinking this Google thing, I could automate this fairly simple. Once there's some things that will happen with Trade the Pool that'll be really cool soon, and you could automate something like this where you build the list every day. You go into TradingView and say, when this and this and this occurs, take the trade, put the stop, take the profit target, do all that. And that's how I always think of is what could I, when I'm trading, what can I automate? And it's how I do my swing trading is pretty much fully automated at this point, because I want to spend my brain power doing research and things like that, and less just about actual punching the buttons.
Really quickly, just while we have just 1 second here, I just want to note that we have this kind of resting liquidity on Bookmap that is about 5 points in here. We are not seeing a hard bounce off it, but this is the area that I wanted to watch for a potential bounce. So what we would like to see is these guys below kind of surging up. What we're kind of seeing is up here, they're putting more active pressure down. So I got to say, okay, now we have a big target down here. It seems like it's a lot of spoofing going on. So I will keep you guys updated, but I'm just letting you know that this is an area where personally I would be trimming my shorts here and just saying, okay, we could try to look below and then reverse. If we see the buyers, it would be pretty abrupt. So I'm just like, I would, if you're short here, I would say to preserve the trade, since we could get a little dead cat, this is a good place to trim into this liquidity. But I gotta say, man, I'm not seeing what a bull would like to see. And when there's that disturbance in the force, and I was looking potentially to take a long, usually that's a good sign for me to wait for things to shake out a little bit further here.
Well, and this is what we mentioned earlier, right? We both of us came into the day in agreement that it would shock us if they didn't try to grab that liquidity below, right? And it's like, now what you're showing in Bookmap is they're doing that. They're doing that right now. They're pushing it down to try to grab the liquidity below. The question is, from the longer term point of view, is kind of what happens next, right? Is that the people that are trying to buy that liquidity push down, do they just overwhelm the other side of it? Do they end up overwhelming the buyers where they are sweeping it back up? For me, again, it's the close. That's why we're actively trading here off the open. We're taking our scalps off the open. We're doing all this to try to put a couple bucks in our pocket, which again, this is me talking out loud to you guys, but then also myself. And then the swing trading, the longer term stuff, that happens generally around the close, because it's okay, what happened throughout the day that I can then sit there for a little bit and analyze on, and then go through my list and say what's some trades that I could take. So currently not seeing any let up yet, but we're getting to that zone that we were talking about. We have kind of flushed this liquidity right here. If we end up getting back above, I think like $600, you could just round is probably the most important number. If we get back above and hold back above at the end of the day, this $600, then we got, they shook out some longs, they trapped in some shorts, the whole song and dance that we all know and love, and they can go from there. I'll look at ATCH just because Steph was talking about it. I don't know where she finds these things. Atlas Clear Holdings. So these look great, and they're great traders. So this had some crazy move off the open. I just see top pre-market gainer. It's the only thing that I see. I don't see any news related to it, but yeah, it looks very nice. You know,
Wow.
this kind of action. So I had a buddy who was a pro trader, and he would call this a pro gap, and this is all he did. And for his definition of a pro gap is, right, they sell off into the gap or they buy the stock up and then it gaps down. Kind of, again, it's a lot of the same thing. It's like what the interview we had with Anne Marie, where she just says, if you can sit down every day and say, where are they trapped, that's probably a pretty good way just to cluster your whole trading career, your whole trading idea. So the reason it would be called a pro gap is because every day for the last 2 months has been a down day, and then all of a sudden they gap it up and they start to push it a little bit off the open, just showing there's someone in there that is trapped. Some buyers, not necessarily trapped, but if I was short this thing from anywhere in here and I saw a big gap up on some news, probably just taking my money and saying, okay, I'll find the next kind of junky type thing to take a position on somewhere else.
Getting further flushes here, so we do look like we're going for that extension at 605 that they were flashing earlier, and at this point it's like take it down to the whole number, right? Get rid of all those stops. That's what I'd say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're still pushing, right? So now we got to start looking at, okay, well, what's right? What are other areas in which they could potentially target, right? So 590 is still a long way away, but that was that last gap down and push, right? That was, I forget, was this more tariff stuff? There's been so many gaps, I forget which one's which. But
dude, Trump trading is aging me rapidly.
Well, yeah, look at all the gray in my beard. What if I told you I'm only 19? I just traded through the last Trump administration.
Yeah, Michael, you're the most healthy 20-year-old trader on Wall Street.
Exactly. No, and this is the same stuff, right? If you go back, and this is, again, as someone who is apolitical because I live in another country, right? This is, a lot of people forget about this, right? This is 2018, 2019, right? They had this even 2016, right? When the election happened. You had all this kind of nonsense. You had a nice trend. And then for this is 2018 all the way to the beginning of 2020, you had this sideways, messy kind of action. So it would not shock anyone who was there for the first time if that's what we're going to see now. That's why, you notice that I'm, for one, not getting super scared about this market, because this is kind of what I expect, is this choppy sideways slop. Which is why I've been saying for ages that this is a buy the dip, sell the rip kind of market. And I think it's going to continue to be a buy the dip, sell the rip kind of market. And we're just going to need to keep an eye on it and just say, okay, what happens? What happens next? Right? We're dipping right now, so it's probably interesting place to look for a buy, and then we'll rip next, and then it'll be an interesting place to sell, and so on and so forth, right? The people that are going to have a bad time, I think, are the people that are dogmatic and trapped and will only trade kind of one way or one style.
Yep. Breakout traders will get chopped to bits. And then when they are crying and out of money, then we can, got to sweep the range very thoroughly, apparently. I got to say, I wasn't expecting this many weeks of chop, but what can you do other than trade what you see, right?
Well, and there's a lot of evidence out there. I presented way back about year 3 of a bull market in general is choppy. So we could be a while. Could be a while that we're looking for it. So yeah, this is the kind of stuff that I'm looking at right now is things that are just a little bit oversold, and SYF, the financial company, is getting down within this gap. Is that something that's potentially buyable here? Right, because we're looking to, again, buy the dip, sell the rip, right?
You can sell.
So here we are. Just go back to the SPY. We are continuing now.
So this is a place where I'd like to see some buyers step in. There's a small bid there, but I wouldn't count on it quite yet.
No, and if you're dip buying this, good luck.
Yeah, if you go significantly lower, few bucks.
Have fun. I will not be joining you in dip buying this. I will be I've taken my trade. I'm just kind of now watching to see what's happening in the market. If we do end up getting some sort of revision, what is that going to look like? Right? What is the bounce when it happens? Where is the bounce going to stall, or where's the bounce going to seize? That's one thing. If we go to the SPY here, right, we have VWAP, and VWAP is often a target if you have a bounce, but that VWAP is 600. So that's a pretty big bounce, right? So again, it could just be a couple days of down, and then the buyers come back in. Just no different from what we saw if we go back here to a daily chart, right? Have we forgotten this quickly? The end of December. This was some FOMC nonsense, massive down day, bigger than both of these days so far combined. And then they bought it up. So, right, do we sell? I have this area highlighted because the only area that I saw kind of initially, and that's the February 3rd low. There's a little bit of a wick there. So if we end up getting a bounce, maybe we could get a bounce in that, somewhere in that zone. Maybe that'd be a place to take a shot. The problem with markets like this, especially even as a day trader, just specifically to day trading, is that I'm not buying this, but I think if you're entering a short right now, you're probably missed the boat.
Yep.
It's probably one of those things where yes, the end of the day, would it shock me if we're above 600 at the end of the day and that was just a dip and rip and everything's great? Yes. Do I want to take the bet on that? No. So one of the interesting ways, if you are going to buy this revision, and something that I've actually chatted about with my buddy Brian Shannon, who's just a very well-known trader, a good friend of mine, GEF, his way of doing it, which is very interesting, is you wait for, let me see if I can find an example. You wait for a swing high or low, and then you just pop a VWAP there. Right? He's where I got a lot of this VWAP chatting from. So you would wait for a low to get put in, and then when you'd put a VWAP there, and then as that, you'd look for a bounce from there, and then a pullback to it. So if we did this kind of on a daily chart, is if you put in SPY, no, there we go. So his idea would be, okay, so this is a major low. Well, I'm going to look for it to bounce off that low, and then I'm going to get the second bounce from there, as opposed to trying to catch the top or the bottom. You're looking for that second bounce to come in. So you would look at the SPY here. We're bouncing a little bit on a 1 minute chart, but if we do a bounce and we come back in and we hold the VWAP from that low print, that's just kind of showing that there's somebody out there, an institution, some sort of algo that is saying, okay, I want to get VWAP now from the low. This is the area that I'm looking to buy, and let's see what happens there. So nice little bounce so far, but a long way to go. What's your book map saying there?
So let me see. Book map, we have basically that 5990 order that we mentioned is showing response. Now I would consider this an active bid here. We've got a really, actually, wow, that's a fast 15 points. So I would say that this is our low to put our VWAP in, right?
Yeah.
Or our anchored VWAP in for sure. Right now, I mean, if we look at my handy dandy ATR indicator here, we dipped into the statistical probability of a bounce zone, and look at that. They said, hey, I'll take a stab here. Why not? So yeah, look at that. Very strong push off of there. I wish I'd caught that a little faster, but no need to be first, right? Now we're going to wait for the safe catch. If you don't get it perfectly, that's totally fine, because down here, that would have been a knife catch, right? And if I buy it up here, what am I really? There's no confirmation. So this is what a bottom usually kind of looks like when they flush them out this extremely, Yeah. So yeah, so they got the little short covering right here. That's what I'd call this now. So now when it comes back on the VWAP, that's when we can see if it's real organic buying coming in, or whether it was just those short covers kind of getting shaken out, So that's that would be the kind of that's kind of my understanding of most double bottoms. The first one is mostly the shorts getting out, and then you're looking to see if it's real, and if the next one is, they're actual new market entries there.
Yeah, and it's always putting your psychology into the traders out there and trying to think like them. So, right, we had this bounce, this pretty significant bounce from the lows. So now you got to start asking yourself, okay, if I was someone who was very interested in getting the lows, if I was a large institution, I'm like, okay, I want to buy the whole market as soon as the market stops selling off the open. I want to get involved. Then you're right. So now it's defending this kind of 596.70, 596.50 area on the SPY. If we do get a push down and then start to reverse from there, then that's something that could be buyable. So now and that's how trends are formed, because that would essentially, what we're talking about is just, are we going to see a higher low, right? And that's how I always like to go back. I think technical analysis is something that can get unnecessarily kind of mystified, where people just talk about, all these patterns. We say, again, we're looking for a higher low. We're saying, will buyers come in at a higher price? And if they do, then potentially that was the low of the day that could get bought. And, I'm just watching, again, the same thing you are, where right now I've got that VWAP anchored to the low there. And now if we come in and we can hold that and start to push higher, then yes, buyers came in at a stronger price. You had that great flush off the open. And now it's probably time to start looking at, something else potentially from the long side. Maybe the idea that I had there on Google, which is actually still up on the day, where if it can get back through this 1-day VWAP, that might be interesting. So a lot of these names, again, are going to look just like the market did. When the market is flushing like that, pretty much everything except a lot of Steph stuff, which is just these really crazy names out there, are going to respect the market. But if you want to talk about relative strength, right, this ATCH, it didn't care at all about the market in any way, shape, or form or respect. So if the market's going to bounce from here, could be a little bit of a tailwind, but a lot of these are just retail driven, right? Every trader in there is retail in some way, right? So
no doubt. Yeah, and they're just in their own universe, right? Like at this point, they could care less what SPY's doing. So yeah, I definitely try to treat them in a different category, and I'm usually not brave enough to play them. I'll be honest. Although this show is helping me a little bit, because you guys are bringing a lot of cool names that I never would have seen. So I gotta hone in on some more scanners, I think, about how to kind of target these fast movers. But and look at that relative strength you were talking about.
Just crazy, right?
Nobody's selling.
These are the lists, right? So I'm looking to fade these, and it could be one of those that, right, if they don't fade, they could be great trades. Like Nike has just been beat up on. If we go to the daily chart, has just been, or the weekly chart here, it's just been smacked for the longest time from nearly cut in half. Now that it's here on the bottom and it looks like it's potentially bouncing, could be some short covering, could be a nice buy happen here. But I'm very happy that I end up not shorting that name. This is why I'm looking for these closes, right? That's why the indicator I've set up, that the price has to close under that. It doesn't mean it will always work, but it just means that, can I filter out some of these where it just undercuts and rips? So yeah, if I was still waiting for a trade, which thankfully Google, I got out somewhere around here, but thankfully Google kind of hit what I wanted to do today. This would probably be one of those if it ends up giving way at the end of the day, or like I mentioned, one of these names getting back through and over VWAP. But the SPY it's a pretty strong bounce. I think it's just.
I wanted to mention on Bookmap really quick. We did the thing. So really quickly,
I got it. There you go.
So we were flushing down, right? We had this big level, then we rushed down to meet it. We saw this level come on, rush down to meet it. This level come on, rush down to meet it. Then we did the big bounce, right? And so right here, I was watching, okay, if this is real, we're going to see another thing that's going to guide us up, right? And it was two things. We saw this was the initial catalyst. They put an order at 600, which is basically saying like, okay, yeah, this was real. And if you come back here, I will fill that all day long and we will pump from there. So that was the kind of level we were looking at. Like, if it's real, they'll say like, hey, come back and give it to me. And then as soon as this came on, they just surged it up here. And now they seem to be guiding price higher to 60.25. So for me, this is looking pretty good for a sharp V type bottom here. And now we're looking at this kind of neckline right here. If we can close above here, which is where we're testing, then I would consider this trapped sellers. and then we can have potentially squeeze up to, I think a very logical place to retest is the 600 level, because 600. Also, one thing that I had an inkling that this was a real bottom is because when you slap a fib on it, all of a sudden, where's our midpoint? It's dead on 600. So they do algorithmically, I find, like to do that. I don't know why it is. Maybe it's just voodoo, but it's good vibes when I see that kind of lineup. So now we're going to see if we can surge up here. This is where I would take some off if I got long somewhere in here. Maybe I got long in this 2-minute window when we were talking about the that boost on that we saw on the book map there. So just something to keep in mind when you're kind of reading these. That was kind of the anatomy of a V-shaped bottom, at least potentially.
Yeah, and it's, again, it's interesting. It's right where that kind of book map and that liquidity was being shown. Makes perfect sense. Now it's, for me, it's kind of all about VWAP, right? Do we, can we? I don't expect us to get right through it in all one really fast go, but right, do we end up seeing a little bit of a bounce to it and then mess around for a while and then break through? That would be very interesting. I think a breakthrough and then maybe a pullback to the multi-day VWAP and then a go, that, or the VWAP from the low, that might be interesting as well. So yeah, a lot of things to keep in mind here when it comes to SPY, but this is looking pretty, like you mentioned, pretty V-shaped right here.
Yeah.
So if we get back through VWAP and back through this 600, the reason that's so interesting is that's the low from Friday. And then it would kind of turn out exactly like we were talking about off the open, which is, right, you run the liquidity, you snatch it all up, then you rip it.
Yeah,
And
off to the races.
if this bar closes green, you got to put like a mat under some perma bears buildings, because they might be jumping out of stuff. It's just,
oh yeah,
it has probably been the most frustrating market for those people that don't adapt. Either the perma bears that are just always looking for the end of the world and they're always wrong that the end of the world is coming, or people again who are just trying to trade trends and they're trying to trade breakouts and all of that. It's just not the environment for it. It will be at some point, right? At some point we will get a breakout and some sort of a trend. But until then, it's a hard life to be in either camp of someone who thinks the market's going to go straight down or someone who thinks the market's going to go straight up. Again, thankfully, as short-term traders, we can adapt. And until I see, and I mentioned this before, a number of closes above all-time highs, not really going to be super big on the trend thing. I just can't be, right? There's no evidence out there that we're in a trending market.
No, I'm with you. I mean, yeah, we gotta trade what we see, and it's always nice when it moves in a straight line, but the reality is the majority of trading is trading ranges and trading, consolidations, and it's not always the clean moves that we would like to see.
Yeah. Well, and again, for us, that we can buy dips and sell rips, that's the environment, right? That's the what you got to change for. And that's why we talk all the time about multiple strategies. It's why, especially for my swing trading, and I do everything systematically, but I run multiple strategies all the time because I don't know in which environment what strategy is going to work. So, today, for example, there's been a couple, I haven't taken any yet, but a couple that have fired off. We can go through some of them just from HUD 8, for example. Right?
Wow.
These are just mean reversion strategies. And I talked about SKY or SYK. I think SYK. No.
It's kind of nice.
SYF. Right? Earlier. So this one's looking like it might be bouncing at that zone. So this is the kind of setups that are working for me right now. It's just oversold, right? Buy dips, sell rips. Even Tesla, right, at this zone might be averaging into a little bit of a trade here if this double bottom can potentially hold, right? So just, it's a different environment, and it's hard for some people, especially if you're a news follower, because it's one of those, I'm sure, on the CNBCs and all of that, they're not going over the charts like we are here. They're the sky is falling, and Trump said this, and then that guy said this thing, and right? Sell all your stocks and move on. Where we're just saying, well, here's the level of interest. We need to see some things happen. Again, if this bar doesn't even close green but closes above 600, to me that's a pretty screaming bullish sign.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. That's what I'm looking for. We are seeing some mixed tape now, so I think that little mini short squeezes over, and now we're going to see. I mean, hopefully, real bulls start to come in. We basically push. I would say what I would not like to see is just everybody step right back out the door and say, "All right, we got our $2. We're out of here." But yeah, plenty of game to be played here. 6025 on ES. That's the level of interest there. That's where we rejected, and we're going to have to flip that to make the next staircase up to VWAP. I'm cautiously optimistic that we do, just because I don't like fading these hard V bottoms. So I would like to see. I mean, heck, maybe that was enough. I was hoping to see a little bit deeper, but hey, we're just off to the races. Let's check a higher time frame.
Well, and let's just look. So look right here, right? That's the VWAP from the low. Came almost right to it, and now it looks like we might be starting to bounce. But I think this is a perfect time because, again, Mitch told us, wanted us to talk about Fibonacci. I think looking at what's happened, now that we finally put in a bounce right now, this might be the perfect time to just grab from the all-time high all the way down to this low, and let's put on the major ones, and we can chat a little bit about what this is and why kind of people look at it. And you know, when it comes to some of the woo-woo stuff about Fibonacci, you can watch some pretty cool YouTube videos. You know, they talk a lot about how this pattern of, you know, the 618 and the 382, this is found a lot in nature. You'll see spirals and sunflowers and shells. And so there's a lot of people out there who think of it as like this natural law of, this is what happens in nature, and spirals of galaxies to you know, amoebas, right? You see it over and over again, that this golden number. The basic idea of it is it's right. 1 + 1 is 2, and then 2 + 1 is 3, and you have this sequence that goes forward. But in trading, generally, what it's used for is for two things. One is Fibonacci pullbacks, and then Fibonacci extensions. So the pullback, and I think a great example here in the market, is just by taking the move we've just had recently. So it's the all-time highs all the way down to this candle low. And most trading tools, I can actually just change this and make this a little bit easier to see. But most trading tools, including the Trade the Pool software and all of these, will have some sort of Fibonacci type idea. And it's basically saying that if you take this move, 31% or 38% of the retracement's right here, half of the retracement is right here, and then 61%. The reason I think that these work myself, and I'll love to get your feedback on this, it's basically 1/3, a half, and 2/3 of the move.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, there's only so many ways you can divide a range, right?
Right. I don't think it has to be, you know, woo-woo, whatever. But what happens is people will kind of look at this and say, okay, inside this range, this is roughly half the move down. So if you were short in this move and you were trailing your stop, it's probably somewhere in this area. And if you were someone who was buying the move and you're saying, well, I don't want it to go all the way back to highs, I want to go half of the way there and I'll take some profit, that's going to be roughly this area. So quite often when you see a big expansion move out, you'll get a pullback and it will land somewhere in this, you know, I've heard of people call the golden zone or something, where if you think that this is just going to be a step lower, then if we got back into that zone, that's where you would start to kind of look at shorts. And even going into today, I was looking at this, and we talked about this a little bit in the morning. This was the Fibonacci for yesterday's range. I was kind of looking right here around and we talked about this, the 605 area, which is, you know, halfway through ish yesterday's range. Right. I don't, you know, makes sense to me.
Absolutely. I mean, it feels very intuitive to me. Another thing I'd like to mention is in terms of like market managers on a stock. So their job is to provide liquidity. So they're always trading on both sides in a range. So their other job is to basically accumulate shares at a good price in any given range, right? So say, that maybe for whatever reasons the market's selling off, they're going to be buyers down here too. So like it's kind of like when it comes to the midpoint. Oh, sorry. So say yeah, market's coming down. Say they are long a tranche of shares here for whatever reason, and the market really wants to bid down. Well, at some point it's going to catch, and they're going to be buyers down here too. So when it comes back to the 50%, it kind of is like mitigated this this movement, so to speak. Maybe market makers aren't the best way to look at this, but just in general, there's often two sides to a trade. So for example, yeah, maybe they're caught underwater here, but maybe they're offsetting that in Qs or another index or another individual name. And when it comes down to a logical buy point, when it's oversold here, they're going to be longing this, and then maybe this is often the place where overall things are kind of I'm sorry, I'm losing my phrasing here watching the trade play out. But in general, I just look for mitigation blocks, which is basically when big trading parties have a chance to get out scot-free on something they were maybe underwater in. And so that's kind of like the magnet gets released, and now this is another point to watch. Often it'll line up with VWAP, like we have the confluence there, along with the 600 level. So there's like a lot of reasons why I would expect the market to bring it up here. In terms of sweeping ranges too, you'll see this very frequently where the golden pocket that you were mentioning, for me, I have it marked in gold here. You'll see that like, okay, we come down, now we're going to consolidate in this range. And if the bottom's not falling out, if the wheels aren't falling off, then often what they'll do is they will bring it back to this golden pocket here to kind of maximize just the movement in that current range, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not very articulate right now. As I'm talking. But
absolutely fine. I'm just trying to find. There it is. So the other way that people will do this quite frequently is they will look for Fibonacci extensions for profit targets, right? So I just have a meta up here on a monthly chart. So this, we've gone from looking at a 2-minute chart of SPY, now we're a monthly chart of meta. And the idea is that when meta got back through all-time highs, you don't really have any clue of potentially where it could go next, because you don't have a target, right? It's never been this high before.
Yeah.
Just looking for it. Doesn't have 1 point. Let's do that. So what? 1.764. I will do that one. And the idea is that just like we talked about on the pullback, we're looking for these fairly logical type level. On the breakthrough, we're also looking for this as a fairly logical level. I mean, all this is doing is it's taking this particular move that sold off down, and it's saying, okay, well, what if we use it's going to add 2/3 of that move to the upside. So you're taking this move that happened here, and you're saying, as opposed to me saying, I think it's going to 100% from that move, I'm going to say it's roughly going to be 2/3 of this zone right here that we can project to the upside. And this is something that people will do a lot of times when they're trying to project what's going to happen next in trends, because again, we can't really guess because there's no structure. So as traders, it becomes really, really hard to say, here's a good profit target for something, because what we're doing a lot in trading, we're saying this is a place that buyers came in, and this is a place that sellers came in the past. Yeah. So when we're at all-time highs, we don't have any of that. There's no buyers, there's no sellers. We're hitting new all-time highs. So this Fibonacci projection is something that I've seen used a lot by CMTs to say, okay, here's what gives me an interesting target in order to place that. So if we were back here on Meta, back on this monthly chart, again, this 2018-19 kind of mess, and we had this pullback right here, if you were then buying this thing in this zone, you could see, okay, well, I'm going to look for an extension above this of that 0.618. You can see it spent like 5-6 months there as well. So it ends up just being, a zone of a profit target, just like, even though that's not the ultimate high on Meta, that ends up being, end up being a zone where we spent 3 months just chopping them down before we broke out. So a nice place to look to take profit. So that to me is something a little bit more interesting that I do quite a bit with Fibonacci. Not so much the pullbacks myself personally, but more of, okay, now that we had the pullback, what can I do to kind of project that high out? So,
man, that monthly meta chart is giving me an existential crisis, Michael. Why didn't we just Why didn't we just sell the farm and put it all on Meta at the bottom?
I know. I
Crazy.
had some options. I had some call options on Meta throughout that, and held them pretty much close to expiry. But I was debating in my head, just converting it into stock and holding it. But I said, no, I'm just going to take the take the money, move on. Ended up being the absolute wrong move. But so here,
I've
very
seen some
interesting.
buyers. Yeah, you're seeing the same thing I am, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, right at the anchored. So we talked about this, right? You anchor view up from the low. That ends up being a place that we're watched. We came back to that. So far, we're digging in a little bit there. We're holding. So that's something that's going to be interesting to me. If this ends up, we get the next couple of minutes where we hold at a decent price, that's going to be something that I'm going to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I think we have the potential makings of a double bottom here. I'm pretty close to pulling the trigger on a starter, but I want to see a confirmation on. That was a nice change of character on that time frame flip there on the half an hour. So I think it's a trade account. Take a little starter, a little something, but pretty small here because it could easily just flush lower. But I don't know. I've done nothing all day. So grain of salt. I am itchy trigger finger here, but I'm starting to see what I'd like. Earlier when it pushed down, it didn't quite get as low as I would like. As you mentioned, it didn't. It kind of front ran that VWAP.
Yeah.
So now we're getting the real test. So let's see if we close a minute candle over here.
All right. So yeah, it's fighting. So again, an interesting zone to take a play off of.
And I just saw another little tranche come in at 605 on Bookmap. So that is a little bit of a, I'm just building a case here. I'm a detective building a case. I'm not saying we got our guy, but I am saying, hey, this is starting to add up.
I always love that too. The term that the CMT nerds use is just a weight of the evidence approach, right?
Yep.
Okay,
Totally.
We're obviously in a downtrend, so that'd be a knock against buying something. But right, we saw this impulse move off the low. That's a point towards it, and then you end up getting to a point where there's a lot of trading systems that work like that. A lot of people think trading systems is binary. When this moving average crosses this moving average, you buy, or blah blah. A lot of these trading systems will simply say, we need to see a confluence of certain things, and if that thing occurs, then we're going to end up taking a trade, and if it doesn't, then we'll get out. But it's just kind of weighting what we're seeing in the overall market based off of that particular thing. Is just, we need to see, we're going to rank all the positives, we're going to rank all the negatives, and that's going to create our bias. I still know a couple guys out there who are traders that do this. They print off a piece of paper every day, and they have all of the indicators they look at, and they're just writing down in the morning, right? Are we above this moving average? Are we above that moving average? Are we doing this? Are we doing that? And they're just ticking a box over and over and over again. And they have rules that basically say, if if say the bullish score is above 10, I'm going to be bullish. If the bullish score is below, is below 10, then I'm going to be bearish. And if I can't get anywhere, if it ends up being mixed, if it ends up being kind of above below 10, then I'm not going to trade that day. And they'll do that every morning and just say, here's what they've done, again, as that weight of the evidence kind of approach. So looks like finally, you see I got the alert there on Nike finally triggering. So that's the first red arrow of the day. Not going to take it personally, but it's one of those things that I need to keep an eye on, and I need to record and just kind of, so put it on the screen here just to show. I'm trying to build this strategy. I'm starting to think that after about that first half hour to an hour of the day, I don't think the strategy is going to work as well, because what we're looking for is what happened here on Google, where you had the flush kind of right off the open, and you have that kind of impulse move, and then you move on with your life. I'm starting to think that later in the day, you're just not going to get as clean of a move. So it's probably not something that's going to work as well. But again, we'll see. We got to keep an eye on it. This is, again, part of the testing. The reason I can't just throw this into a back tester the way that I do with a lot of things is because I'm picking the stocks every day, and that becomes impossible to go back years and say, oh, well, I would have picked this and would have picked that without doing a call kind of bias. So that's why we're moving forward. And that's one of the things, again, I love about Trade the Pool, because I have popped a number of accounts trying to make this strategy work. Partly the strategy, you guys have seen me jump between a number of different strategies, partly my own stupid emotions, but the amount that has cost me versus if I just open up my own $25,000 account and said, okay, I'm going to leverage this 4x and start day trading, I have lost way less money by doing that. So the way I look at it is paper trading, or forward testing is the fancy name for quants, with the potential benefit of, if I end up doing well, then I'll get an account at the end of it, right? So far, just doing the 20K accounts until I get one funded, and then I'm going to look to do some of the larger ones, and then potentially move some of my swing trading over to Trade the Pool as well, where again I can systematize that, because why not? Why not take it in my own account and in a Trade the Pool account as well, and see what happens? So
totally. Oh, I love it, man. Yeah, it's all about figuring out how we can hone our edge without eliminating ourselves from the game in the process. So I love everything that you're saying, and I'm trying to internalize it, because a lot of it's, luckily I'm to the point now where most of this is stuck, and I've learned it the hard way. But there's a difference between knowing something and knowing it enough to actually act upon it.
yeah.
So some people only learn through pain. I think that was me.
And I will say that whole replacing yourself is something that a lot of people worry about when it comes to like quantitative or systematic trading. I don't see it like that at all, because I just look at it as, again, this comes from my hedge fund world. In the hedge fund space, there was the portfolio manager and then the execution trader. The guy who decided that he was going to buy Apple and hold it in his portfolio, he didn't hit the buttons. Right? He went outside to, some guy who just graduated university, who was sitting in front and said, listen, you've got 2 weeks to buy me X amount of Apple, go nuts, get me a good price or you're fired, type of thing. And the way I look at it is that by systematizing the trading, it allows me to, think of new ideas to potentially trade, read studies, watch the market, doing what I'm doing now, where I'm not going to be trading anymore today. From the day trading side of things, swings I do a little bit more in the afternoon, but by me being here and going through the charts and keeping my pulse on the market, that's how I can create certain ideas. Like, I'm starting to think now of this AVWAP kind of setup, and it's just making my brain, if I were to go maybe to some of these insane things that Steph loves to play, and look at these guys and say, well, maybe in the afternoon, once all the degens are done pumping them to the moon, maybe the move is to PG was another one she was looking at. This might be a perfect example, right? Maybe the move, right? Take a VWAP, you pop it there, and then there's your stop. You say, okay, well, so 330, if I'm going to short it here, now that it's below this VWAP, I'm just going to put my stop right there, and then I'll kind of cover at the end of the day. So what I've noticed when I started to get systematic with my trading is I had the same fear. I'm going to like, okay, well, is a robot going to replace me entirely? And then it turns out absolutely not, right? It's just my brain is now freed up to do different stuff. I'm always thinking about what's the next idea, because now that I can systematize it, the thing just dropped like 50 cents.
Look at that. Yeah.
They hurt us. But now that my brain's freed up to come up with ideas, then that becomes interesting. And that becomes the joy of it as well, where if I can figure out a strategy that ends up beating the market and I can have a robot do it for me, why not?
Yeah, win-win. Yeah, and Michael, I think it's important on that note to remember, like, algos have been in the game for a while, right? And we're still doing just fine. There's I put me in a room with a dumb bot, I will out trade it. Put me in a room against a good trader, and that's a different story.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and it's about what you're offloading as well, right? The thing that I really need to kind of hammer home with a lot of people is that systematic trading is not high frequency trading. A lot of people equate those two things. They say, oh, well, it's a robot, it's trying to scalp in and out 100 times a day. No, I'm looking to systematize this setup that so far I've taken one trade today, and I will probably only take one trade today. So it's not high frequency in any sort of manner. It's just, instead of me waiting for this red arrow to come, taking a short position and then putting out all those orders, well, why do I need to do that? Right? So it's an exercise that I do at the end of every day, not just for my trading, but for kind of life in general, where I just think of, what could I have outsourced today when it came to either punching the button to place the trade, or something that I've done. Because in a world of AI and APIs that can link things and things that can auto trade for you, anything that you say, well, I could outsource this to an assistant, is probably only 2 or 3 steps away from being automated entirely. Right. So that's just kind of my thought process behind that.
Oh, I love it. Oh, and I'm loving this little curl up on SPY. It's too early to be actionable for me, but I'm starting to see the potentials of a double bottom.
So yeah, we are still flirting there with that AVWAP. It's interesting that's all happening right around that price. It does look like a little fight's going on. Does your book map say anything about this?
I mean, it's just hanging out. It's got the orders on a 600 just holding steady. So this should be the floor. I would expect to see, that's what I like to see when this turns orange. See, it was kind of cooling off here. I would like to see these kind of continue to ratchet up and kind of pull us up. We might need to dive down a little bit, and then we'll need to see this hold steady. So it's kind of just a waiting game here. We're ping-ponging between this 10-point range. So it's kind of boring, to be honest. Yeah, that we just reversed a little bit. I wouldn't expect anything too hectic until we get outside of there. Obviously, price will not move drastically until it moves a little bit first. That's my my radical call out there. I don't know. I think 600 is probably going to be a hold, but I will cross that bridge when we get there.
Yeah, just watching so we have entered this, and it's funny, we talk about this all the time, that there are ranges that nobody cares about, and that's why they're ranges, because there's no trading going on. This doesn't feel like this. This feels like a kind of a battle range where people are saying, okay, here's the lines. We're going to wait until, if you're buying, you're maybe nibbling because you're a little bit worried. If you're shorting, the market's down so much today, so you're probably a little bit worried. So it just seems like everyone's like walking on eggshells, just waiting for a direction to be called, and then participate in that direction.
Yeah, and we always have this fun little game of tug of war when you're near any round number on an index, because it's like, okay, yes, the futures are sitting at 6K. What about SPX? What about SPY? Like, which one of these kind of contingencies of buyers is going to show up at any given point and kind of push and pull us around here? In general, I think that futures are often kind of where I'd like to see the move be real. So that's kind of why a book map is so good for me. So this 600 or 6,000 level, that's the name of the game for me. I'm just hanging out. Eventually it'll respond, either it'll hold. It seems like we're coming back for a little test here, or it won't. And then we have our levels below too.
Yeah, everything that has come through kind of my swing trading stuff has all been kind of sell-off revision of the mean stuff. So that's why I'm here with bated breath, which is another thing, I guess, just to continue the conversation about the fact, if you systemize your trading and you walk away early from the screen and everything, we're not ever saying, okay, well, then you just go and you get in your Lambo and have a good time, right? It's the work is involved, because what I'm doing from someone who's going to be swing trading in the afternoon, this kind of action is super interesting to me, because this is just showing that we have this level that people are battling, and that level is happening between 2 very interesting points, one just being right the low of the day, and then the other one here being VWAP. And I need to see a resolution here before I've got a whole list of swing trades that triggered today, before I can really take a shot one way or the other from that side of things, where it's so it's important that you kind of stick here. And again, this is an idea that I had that I think is very interesting. So I'm going to try to see, right, scanning later in the day. So I want to look at stuff like Nike, because so what if, right, we anchored a VWAP from here on Nike and then bought it as it broke through, right? That type of thing, playing off these zones. And the reason for that is because we have to systematize things. It has to be something that's kind of easily programmed, right? It has to be something that The things that are very hard to get systematized is like price patterns and things like that, because they're they're subjective in nature, right? Whereas above or below this indicator, that is very objective in nature. So you can end up really kind of deciding what it is that you want to do. But really, I did not expect to see this congestion last this long. I expected to see a battle resolve one way or the other. So let's take a look at some of the other sectors out there. Like, what are the Qs doing? Same kind of thing, but a little more kind of bleeding down. IWM, same kind of.
Surprising. That's, I don't know, that interesting.
It's interesting to see RSP is actually green-ish,
Right.
roughly on the day. Very, very barely, but yeah, we're green on the day on the equal weighted index. So, it's one of those. Seems like this is a bit led by large cap tech, which is fine if you're holding large cap tech. But so one of the things to watch to see if that difference shrinks is just load up some of the big names, load up your Apples, your Nvidias, your Googles, that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, and that's definitely handy to kind of, you can get a leading edge if you're day trading SPY too. You can get a decent leading edge by watching what the Qs are doing and even honing in more and seeing what the biggest leaders of those are: Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, etc. It is all top down in that if SPY is going to move up, then Apple's going to move up, to some degree or another. If not Apple, then the other names. So you can kind of, I like having them all on the list and just rapidly scanning through each and kind of just getting a feel, and you can really kind of get a pulse of the market, so to speak, just in terms of where the capital's going.
Yeah.
So like Microsoft's curling up nicely. I would expect that to lead if we are going to go up. Amazon's heavy, Google kind of middle, Meta leading down, TSM leading down. Even names like Walmart are rough. JPM's showing relative strength. Lilly's showing relative strength. So, these are defensive names that are leading, which is a little bit sketchy if you're a bull.
Yeah, and it does look like we're getting a little bit of a resolution lower here.
Oh, yeah,
Let's see if we can figure that out. I was just looking at ATCH because Steph said playing like Russian roulette. This is absolutely insane. Like, it's one of those, it kind of understates until you really look at the axis here.
Yeah.
Realize that's 13 to 9 in like 2 candles.
Like,
that's
what
just
do I do with that?
So
I don't know what to do with that chart.
You pray.
Yeah, exactly.
You pray with that chart. Yeah, that's certainly nothing that I'm going to be super interested in. So I wish Steph and whoever's playing that the absolute best, because I just wouldn't have the gumption. I'll trade that with one share. How about that? We'll see.
There you go. Man, Michael, they're boring me out here. I gotta say, this 6K level, every time it gets a little bit close, there is a buyer there, but where are you? Come on, what are you waiting for? Do the thing. We only got 10 minutes left here.
That's a Shannonism from Brian Shannon that I love as well, where he says if they don't scare you out, they'll wear you out.
Yep.
The idea is right after a big spike down, they'll do this where they try to grind people out of their positions. So for me, this kind of trade would simply be you mark the low of the day. I feel like I should be, if we can get back through that high. It's kind of interesting to see that we failed right as we tried to reclaim. And if we look at this is the lows from Friday. We came. It's
a little sketchy, isn't it? Like, I mean, I can see the case for bears here, absolutely, but
right to the tick and said absolutely not. So that is the area that needs to be retaken, because that's, we go to the daily chart. That's the difference to me, whether or not this is just a little down move and a rip, or whether that this is kind of a longer term sell. Whether we're going to try to maybe retest this area or something like that is how quickly, because you got to remember, for all of these other candles, it was gap down and rip. It was gap down and rip, right? Gap down and rip. This is the first time that it was gap up and sell a little bit. It reminds me of more of this candle right here, where they had just that, a gap up, and then they sold, and then the next day had that little bit of a gap down. So again, not saying bull market over, run for the hills. I'm just saying maybe deeper into this range than we initially thought. This volatility is just going to kill a lot of people out there because, again, the market just hates, more than anything, just hates that volatility.
I was going to say, with your if they don't scare you out, they'll wear you out. Another thing is that wearing out process is grinding options down. They're killing premiums of the day. You know, the market makers are basically keeping things neat and tidy and within the projected moves so that nobody's getting blown out, except for retail, of course. They're always getting blown out. But, you know, it's I don't know. It's right as we say here, volume comes into SPY and it's just battle zone. So yeah, there's something to be said. If you don't have an edge, don't trade it, you know? So you saw my itchy trigger finger, and I said, all right, well, I'll wait for the minute candle to close, and it never did. So I guess that's good. If I was in let me pull up the chain. If I got into like a 0-day call there, I think I'd be down probably 50%. That'll show you
in just the chop. And then again, for me, this is why it'd be shares, and I'd just be buy it, stop the low, target over at VWAP, just walk away and see what happens. Because
this game is hard enough already, right? Why add another way to be wrong?
Oh, this could go all day. I wouldn't be shocked if this is just a chop and slop all day, because it does feel like nobody is able to commit. Right. They're worried on all sides. They're worried on both sides. They're just like, you know, let's have something occur one way or the other. And we're just we're chopping. So unless this low gets broken, in which case I think you could see potentially another flush down. Does that flush get bought up? Who knows? But until then, I think it's just going to be this nightmare sideways kind of an action. And really, going over the heat map here, I'm not seeing anything stand out wild. Oh, other than NVIDIA, did that go red to green or green to red? Thought it gapped up today. Yeah. Well, so that happened right off the open. That's actually hitting lows as the market's not.
So that move.
Yeah, so that means that other things are holding up the space.
UNH, LOY, Google, Apple.
Yeah, more defensive names. Google still that's actually impressive to me that Google is actually still holding after all that. It makes my idea to potentially buy a breakthrough. Now it's going to be kind of these 2-day VWAPs, I think, a little bit stronger. Again, not going to do it, but formulating that, because in a perfect world, it'd be nice to have trades that happen sporadically throughout the day, with hyper focus being right on the open, which it should be. And then, if you get an alert somewhere through the day, maybe you size down and you take some of those trades a little bit smaller throughout the day. Hopefully, if you've got a good morning kind of cushion happening there.
Totally. Oh, I'm happy for my my quantum compute shorties. They're finally getting some breathing room there. That was not a fun trade for a while. I had a few friends who were getting whipped around by IonQ and GTI, but it looks like they're starting to resolve downwards finally. About time.
Yeah.
At least RGTI on my list is getting cooked.
Well, these are a lot of the first names that get hit when kind of the air is let out a little bit. People get a little bit worried. They're not gonna, right? I'm less likely to sell their NVIDIA and more likely to sell their company that doesn't really do anything right now.
Right.
And just hope it does in the future. So
we
can take a look. Yeah, if we go into the change here this way. So Burke B, new all-time highs. So old Papa Buffett still has it. I don't know what component is doing that, but good for him. Right?
How's he up 4%? What's going on? Are they squeezing Burke B?
I'll take it, right?
I gotta dig into this. I'm very curious now.
Yeah, so we got Burke B, we got other things up. A lot of these make sense. KIE XLV is actually doing okay, which is great considering that UNH is like the second largest component. And that got hammered, and this is still doing okay. We have Jets. Moo is ag. It's a funny ticker for ag
It is
business
fun.
bouncing. And then at the bottom, we've got a lot of the stuff that you would expect. So PSIL is down a little bit, right? Psychedelics pulling back after this monster move it had. We have WGMI. These are all of our Bitcoin miners. Let's take a look at Bitcoin. Down a bit, but again, still holding this range. This at some point, I think, resolves lower and then rips immediately after.
Yeah, I'm with you. That's such a long time to be in such a, relatively tight range after a big move. Yeah, I'm a Bitcoin bull, but it's tough to be a miner bull, I gotta say. There's a few names I do like in the space.
See,
This one killed me, man. I thought we were doing the thing. I thought this was real, the breakout.
A little bit of a rug pull here on old Kathy. She was probably getting excited to finally go to work for the first time after being crowned the largest wealth destroyer of all time, which is pretty awesome.
God. Poor Kathy. What can you say, right? I don't know. She was selling Palantir too. She was learning. She was buying Amazon, selling Palantir. You hate to see it.
Yes, the RSP is still up. So that's interesting. So it's just showing that it's just tech. It's tech that's down primarily, and everything else is actually doing okay. So, that's the chart I did for the Dow. Yeah, so Nvidia down, Palantir 11%.
That's a smoke show. By the way, Berkshire, they had earnings. I was like, what in the world is up making it rip 4%? I guess they beat pretty heavily there, pretty handily. Good for them. Still got it.
Yeah, there he is. There he is up in the top corner under finance. So yeah, good for him.
Doing something right.
Good for him. Slow and steady wins the race, right? I remember everyone talking about, there's been a few times in my career where they say the old man's toast. One was when he was buying financials during the financial collapse. Everyone's like, he's lost his mind. He's out. What's he doing? But he walked into Goldman Sachs, sat down, looked the CEO in his eye, and he said, I want a 10% convertible at the current price. And the guy said yes. So for those who don't know, basically he said, I want a bond. I want you to pay me 10% a year to hold this bond that at any point I can convert into stock and then sell the stock. And that was at like the height of everything. And I remember the news just saying he lost it. Goldman Sachs. Let's go to a monthly chart, do a little old man chat with Mike. It was in this area. It was right near the lows. So he got paid for like 10 years. He got paid a 10% return on his money for just sitting there. And then I can't remember when it was, but it was somewhere in the 2020s, I believe, where he converted that into stock for triple his money and then sold it. So while he waited to triple his money, they just paid him 10% a year. And it's like, that's the difference between Warren Buffett and the rest of us is he could walk into the Goldman Sachs CEO and sit down across the table from the biggest company out there and just say, this is what I want from my trading.
Absolutely. What a trader. What's the saying? Be bussin' when everyone's sus. Be sussin' when everyone's bussin'. I don't know. Something the Zoomers say.
We'll just go down at the greatest. And yeah, before then, it was before my time, but they thought he lost his mind during the tech boom because he wasn't buying any tech stocks. So when that exploded, he was fine. And then, yeah, when Kathy was out there saying, oh, no, Kathy is the new Warren Buffett.
Oh, yeah.
And then we could do a Burke.B, and then we could just add in.
Are you going to do it? Oh, don't do it to her. Oh, don't do it to her.
Right. So it was this period of time that everyone was saying, oh, man, Warren Buffett, you've lost the touch. It's all about buying all these really crazy speculative names and then just tank. And this thing's just been slowly. Right. If we anchor it from the beginning of ARK, everyone's like, oh, this is amazing. And yeah, he's just been like, which chart would you rather? You seem like a genius and then a moron, or just slow kind of grind up there. Nice. What's that? 250% gain over the life.
That's a chart right there.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. All right, guys. Well, I hope you appreciate it. Kind of the nerd crew. Right. We had Mitch away again, having good times. He's out at Disney World or Disneyland. I can't remember which of the Disneys he lives near, but good for him. Right? You know, why work if you can't go and enjoy it? So he had us come in. I appreciate Steve for popping by, because otherwise you would have just had to hear me rant for an entire 2 hours. I don't think anyone wants that. I don't think anyone needs that in their life. But so far, so good. What I will just say, and I'll give you a closing thought too about the market, is I kind of think the move's been had for the market. I think that down flush was kind of what everyone needed. For me personally, I'm going outside. I'm going to walk the dog. I'm going to do other stuff. And then afternoon, I will see what happens at the close. I think it's going to be one of those that if you start trading throughout today, you're probably going to drive yourself absolutely batty, right? Just because I think you're going to get a lot of this kind of back and forth chop and slop. So, you know, trade at your own risk, I will say, just for the rest of today. You know, the obvious areas. If we start ripping through VWAP, maybe a short-term bottom. If we start breaking down lows, maybe we continue. But again, I just think it's going to just be this messy nightmare that I'm just not really part of for now. I want to take that little one trade that I got that gave you my $100, and I want to walk around with a smile for the rest of the day and not get mad that I overtraded for the rest of it. Do you got anything to leave the people with, Mitch? You got any ideas, any last thoughts, final thoughts of the market? Or
let's see, nothing too crazy. Honestly, I think you're right. Overtrading is kind of that's the worst thing you could be doing. I'm looking at the chart here. Looks like it's double bottoming. Probably not, though. I think that it's going to trade sideways. I'm not going to stand here and watch every minute candle. I think going outside sounds like the best trading plan today.
good. Well, if I can do it up here in Canada, then wherever you're at, you can go outside too. So, all right. I appreciate it very much, Steve. Thanks for coming by and helping out when Mitch is out playing and having a good time. And we'll chat soon.
Sounds great. Thank you.